Okay, here comes the fun part now. We've assembled an esteemed group of panelists to really chat about the smart home category, the smart lock category, I should say. I'm going to bring up in a second John Quain, who has written for the New York Times. John, you can take a bow. He's a technology reporter and a bioethicist. I love that part. Andrea Smith, who is a technology reporter. You've probably seen her on ABC News and on actually on many different different types of news programs. He's just a consultant speaker. We've got Shane Starnes, who is a Amazon A-list influencer, and that's really important because we wanted to get someone who could talk and represent, hey, here's what I'm hearing from my influencers on the product category. And then we've got Daniel Dillion, who's a VC and angel investor, but he's also a real estate owner, and we'll be able to talk to the smart lock category from an Airbnb and just a multiple rental property standpoint. So the first person we want to chat with for a few minutes here, and each of these sections will be about 10 minutes, so we'll probably go for about 25 or 30 minutes together. But John, I'm going to let you take the microphone.
Sure. Well, I think we were... Yeah.
Let me do that. Oh, thank you very much. She's a professional. So, John, from a technology standpoint, you've been looking at this category for some time. What are the things that jump at you from a technology standpoint and from a home security standpoint? What has changed over the last few years that really makes this category so interesting and so vital?
Right. Well, if you remember what it used to be like, where you subscribed to a service, you needed a professional installation, it cost a lot of money for all of that. Not everybody could afford to do something like that. And they also weren't smart. You remember racing to open the door and then punching your code before you set off the alarm and the police showed up. So that was sort of the early days, and it wasn't smart. There was nothing like geolocation, like if you leave your home and it knows whether you're home or away. None of that was available. There was no remote unlocking of the home. If you had a dog walker or somebody needed to go and check the heat, or you were worried about the electricity, something had gone, there was no way to really do that. And you needed to have emergency keys. I mean, in some places you give a set to your friend in case you forget yours. All that sort of gone with these smart locks and these devices now. And they've gotten much more sophisticated, and they're much less money. So for a fraction of the cost now, you can install one yourself. You can do it yourself. Like we said with the screwdriver, it took me 20 minutes with the UltraLock to change one out. Now, I've done it before, obviously, but a lot of people, it doesn't take very long at all. So that's a big difference. And there's, it's sweeping up. So there is about 21% of homeowners now and renters have a smart lock installed of some kind or another. It's going to be about 61% within a couple of years. That's the estimate. And that's because it's affordable now. We can all do it. You can also do it if you rent, which is a whole market that's forgotten. So my landlord doesn't need to know whether I have one or not. I can install it and then uninstall it when I leave. I think those are big differences.
No, those are all great points, and I think you've rightly said that the smart lock category is really starting to hit its stride from a technology, from an install standpoint. I mean, let's face it. When you're buying one of these smart locks, generally speaking, you're not going to probably just buy one. If you own a home, you have more than one door that gets it. So most people will love the fact that they typically want to use the same brand. They want to have the same app, be able to use with those. But you also mentioned the Airbnb rental portion. And one of the capabilities that the UltraLock smart apps have is the whole idea of being able to get a code that will expire for a certain time. So if you've got to let a housekeeper into the home, very convenient things. You couldn't do that in the early days of the smart lock. But let's talk a bit about Apple HomeKit, because that's obviously the big news here. The Apple HomeKit, Apple has been, I think it would be fair to say, has been a bit of a fledgling player in the smart home kit. I think that's fair. Hopefully no missiles will be fired at me from Cupertino for saying that. But there are people who are dedicated to the Apple ecosystem. They have bought into the whole HomeKit idea. And I want to get your perspective on the importance of the HomeKit component of today's announcement.
I mean, one of the things about Apple is you can't forget them. Like you said, they're not the leader in the category right now. Certainly not number 4, something like that behind Google and those kind of players. But you've got to be able to work with everything. You can't buy a lock at Lowe's and then get it home and go, oh, it doesn't work with the stuff I have. Or My daughter is an Apple user, even though I'm not. She's not going to use this. It's got to work with everything out there, whether you have a Samsung TV and it's smart things, or whether you're an iPhone user and you have an iPad mini or whatever you're using. And there are a lot of users. So even though the Apple isn't number one, they have 163 million iPhone users in the United States alone. So that's a market you don't want to ignore. Even if they're not number one now, we don't know what they'll be like in 2 years from now. Also having that compatibility with Alexa, SmartThings, everything. Again, it's got to work with everything I've got. If that's what I like to do, if my interface is voice, I should be able to use it with Siri or with Alexa. If I'm comfortable with the fingerprint, then I should be able to use it that way as well. I actually wanted to say, so Apple sort of made us used to the biometric. A few years ago, you recall, a lot of discussion. I don't want to use my fingerprint on something. I'm not sure who's storing that, where it is, etc. Now Apple has made that just ubiquitous, and that's the interface that we want to use. And Apple is also end-to-end encryption. So that security aspect that they offer, I think you're going to see more people using it that way. So I think that compatibility is essential now.
Just last 30-second comment on Matter. I had to use that magic word. We're already an hour into the presentation, Mark, and it's only said Matter 5 times. It is important, there's a bit of a waiting for Godot, for those of you who have a theatrical background, analogy to this, but you do think Matter is important.
It could be. I mean, it's hard. You go to a dozen, 20 some odd CESs and shows like that, and I don't know how many shows at IFA in Berlin, and they're always this, it's going to take over. Everybody's got that emblem on their device. It's hard to say. It could, absolutely. And you don't want it in this market. To make the lock easy, these devices need to be much easier. That was the whole complaint that consumers had a couple of years ago. So you want it to be compatible with all that? Absolutely. You can't ignore it. And it could really help in terms of security, as you pointed out. But there was some skepticism still out there. But you got to build it in anyway. You just have to.